Well, James Franklin just got fired. Mike Norvell may not be very far behind him. Indiana may be the best team in college football right now. SEC officiating is a disaster. And has Arch Manning arrived? We have a lot to talk about on today's video, guys. But first, please like, comment, subscribe. I know these videos don't look like much, but they take a lot of time, effort, and late nights, so I would really, really appreciate it. Anyways, let's break down some games. And there are plenty of places that we could start with this video, but I have a feeling the most interesting game to kick this off with is Indiana versus Oregon. So if you watched my preview video, you already know that I am undefeated when I call a gut check game. And what I mean by that is every now and again, there are one of those matchups where logic is telling you to pick one way, but something in your gut just screams to go the other way. And this was one of those games for me. I trusted my gut before. When Florida State took down Alabama, I called that. When Georgia Tech upset Clemson, I called that. And when Vanderbilt shocked South Carolina, I also called that. And this game is joining that list. I trusted that Indiana would walk into Autzen Stadium and walk away with a win. And they didn't just win. They won by double digits, and honestly, it should have been worse. Indiana is the real deal. I learned that the hard way when they torched Illinois earlier in this season, and I was not about to make the same mistake by picking against them twice. And now, after beating a really good Oregon team on the road, they've earned their spot among the nation's elite. I'll have them power rated in my top 5 later on this week. You can check that out on my socials. They will be in the top 5, maybe the top 3. Their defense is seriously legit. They did exactly what I said that they would do. They rattled Dante Moore. He is an incredible young quarterback, but he's never seen a defense with this kind of speed, discipline, and edge rush. And early on, he made some plays, sure, but once Indiana's pass rush settled in, you could feel the game shifting Indiana's way. Every hit, every hurry, every sack started to chip away at some of his confidence, and the mistakes followed after that. And Indiana didn't give up much on the ground either. Oregon could never really establish a run game. Their defense held strong for a while, especially in the first half. But in the second half, it became crystal clear who the more physical team was. Indiana leaned on Oregon. They controlled the trenches. They controlled the tempo. They controlled the game. Even when their quarterback, Fernando Mendoza, threw a brutal pick 6 in the fourth quarter to tie things up, Indiana never flinched. They came right back, imposed their will again, and finished the job. And outside of that one throw, Mendoza looked like a Heisman-level quarterback. He played with poise, he played with command and confidence, everything you want to see from a guy leading a playoff-caliber team. And you add that with performances from guys like Elijah Sarah and Roman Hemby, and you're looking at one of the most complete rosters in the country. This team is not a fluke. This was not a trap game or anything like that. Indiana just lined up against Oregon, who's a perennial contender, and they were tougher, they were cleaner, and they were better coached. And this is not last year's Indiana team that barely snuck into the playoffs and looked out of place once they got there. This group can go toe-to-toe with anybody in the country, and I firmly believe that. Now, as for Oregon, look, it's still a really, really good team. This loss is definitely going to sting, but sometimes a loss like this is exactly what a young team needs. They got punched in the mouth, and they will grow from it. Dante Moore is still special, the defense still has playmakers, and the schedule ahead of them gives them a real chance to rebound. So no, this is not the end of Oregon's season. Far from it, but tonight was not about Oregon. It was about Indiana showing everyone that they are not just some feel-good story. They are for real. Now we have to talk about some unfortunate news because James Franklin has officially been fired from Penn State. Now, I'm not even going to spend too much time breaking down the actual loss to Northwestern because the theme of that one is obvious. Penn State is spiraling, and firing their head coach was their way of stopping the bleeding. But the bigger question is, was it the right move? And my early thoughts are probably not. I get it. James Franklin hasn't been able to win the big games. He struggled to get Penn State over that big game hump. And for a program that invests so heavily in football, the frustration from the fans and the boosters, it makes sense. But when you look at the big picture, the massive buyout that they just paid, the uncertainty of who comes next, and the fact that Franklin has consistently kept this program relevant, this feels like an overreaction to me. Because here's the truth. James Franklin is one of the best coaches in the country. Now, he's not going to be your Kirby Smart or your Ryan Day, but he's a lot closer to that tier than he is most of the other coaches that are on the hot seat right now. Penn State is rolling the dice to get someone better, but the odds are the next coach will actually be worse, in my opinion. And that's before you even factor in how much it's going to cost. You've got the buyout, and then you're going to have to pay top dollar to attract a new coach and a new staff, and that's a really risky game, and we've seen other teams and other programs do that same thing, like Florida when they fired Dan Mullen, or Auburn when they fired Gus Malzahn. Fans wanted more, and both programs went through way worse stretches immediately following that, and honestly haven't even recovered. Now, I'm not saying that Penn State is doomed to repeat that, but it's definitely not unlikely. They were stable, not elite, but consistently relevant, and they just threw that away chasing something that may not even exist. And as for James Franklin, he's going to land on his feet. I firmly believe that. He is way too good not to, and I think he'll find success wherever he goes next. Heck, we'll take him at Florida State. I think he'd be much better than what we have in Mike Norvell. Anyways, before we get to actual football, let's talk about Georgia versus Auburn. Yeah, this was not really a football game. This was an officiating disaster show. I swear I saw more of the refs in this game than actual players. So I'll definitely talk about officiating in a second, but first, let's touch on the very little bit of football that we actually saw. This was a tale of two halves, I think. In the first half, it was the same old story. Georgia was awful against early scripted drives, and Auburn came out firing, moved the ball easily, and Georgia could not do anything offensively. Thanks, Mike Bobo. It was just punt, punt, punt. It was pretty much all that we saw from Georgia in the first two quarters, at least until that last drive. So Georgia went down 10-0, and it looked like Auburn was about to twist the knife with a touchdown before halftime to make it 17-0. Then came the controversial goal line fumble and Georgia's field goal that sent us into halftime 10-3. And trust me, we will get to that fiasco in a second. Just give me 1 minute. After the break, though, this game completely flipped. Auburn just completely collapsed mentally, emotionally, everything. They didn't score a single point in the second half, and they totaled only 15 total yards. Georgia made the adjustments, they leaned on their defense, and they found a way to gut it out. Now, let's be honest, this Georgia team is not the dominant version that we have gotten used to. They're not a national championship contender right now. I don't believe that, at least. And I'm not even sure they're going to make the playoffs. But they fight. They just keep chopping wood, even when it's ugly. And that said, there are glaring flaws. Kirby Smart has to look at both coordinators here. The offense is way too predictable and inefficient under Mike Bobo. We know this. And the defense has lost its edge in the secondary and in the pass rush. We are terrible at pressuring the quarterback and getting sacks. And for Auburn, this team is way too one-dimensional. They play hard, their defense is great, but once you stop Arnold from running the ball, they have no answers. Now, let's talk about the ugly part that everyone wants to talk about, and that is officiating, because it was nasty. And look, I am a Georgia fan, so I will take the win here, but from a viewing experience, this was just awful. No accountability, no transparency, and honestly, it looked like the refs didn't even know what they were doing half the time. The final 2 minutes of this first half were 36 minutes of real time. All of that because of the officiating. It was embarrassing. So let's talk about where officiating went wrong, and let's start with a goal line fumble. Now, I actually think they got the call itself correct. It looked like the ball started to come out before crossing the plane, and even if it didn't, there definitely wasn't enough evidence to overturn the call on the field, which was a fumble. What was weird for me was that Georgia actually picked up the ball, ran it all the way back for the touchdown without any whistles being blown, to my knowledge, without being down at all, and they never called it a touchdown for Georgia. Now, again, there could have been a whistle that I missed or something, but that was something that was pretty interesting, is that they called it a fumble, but also didn't give Georgia the touchdown afterwards. Didn't understand that. But the even crazier issue was the timeout debacle, and that's the one that I think most people are talking about. This was the moment that made absolutely no sense to me. The play clock was about to hit 0. Auburn players were clapping to try to draw a false start, and Kirby clearly motioned for a timeout. At the same time, he was yelling at the refs, they are clapping. So here's what we do know from this segment, from just watching the game. 1, Auburn was clapping, which is illegal. 2, Kirby was motioning for a timeout. And 3, Georgia would have gotten a delay of game penalty because the ball was not about to be snapped before the play clock hit 0. So the refs had 3 choices here. They could either call the clap penalty, give Georgia the timeout, or flag Georgia for a delay of game. So what do you think they did? Well, none of them. They just reset the play and made it up as they went. And from there, it just got worse. The wrong penalties, mixed up announcements, total chaos. And I've talked about officiating before, and I'm going to keep doing it because it's a real problem, especially in the SEC. They have no accountability whatsoever. There's no oversight, no consequences, and fans are just supposed to accept it. So honestly, hats off to the Auburn AD, John Cohen, for lighting up that official going into halftime. The frustration was well-deserved, not just for Auburn, but for both teams, because stoppages honestly hurt Georgia too. I know you don't want to hear that from a Georgia fan, but when the refs stop the play every 2 minutes, you kill tempo. You give the defense time to reset. Nobody wins in that scenario. And my heart does go out to Auburn fans. This is twice now that officiating has really affected games of theirs. They already got burned against Oklahoma earlier this year. Bad enough that the SEC apologized for it. And now this. It's just sad that the supposed best conference in college football can't get the basics right. Meanwhile, the ACC, they have open mics for the refs and quicker reviews. Not perfect, but way better. This game was a bad football game. And for the suits who want to treat this sport like a business, it was also a bad TV product. Nobody wants to watch refs take over a rivalry game like this. But I'm tired of talking about it, so let's move on to Texas versus Oklahoma. And the Red River shootout did not go how I expected. If you watched my preview video, you know that. I was pretty emphatic about my thoughts on this one. I thought it was crazy that Texas was even favored in this one, and I genuinely believed that Oklahoma would win with or without John Mateer. And if you watch the game, Texas proved me all the way wrong. They flat out ran away with this game. Now, Arch did look better. Not great. I don't even think he looked all that good, but better. The real MVP, though, was the Texas defense and the Texas offensive line in the second half. But the defense was elite. They stuffed Oklahoma in a phone booth and smothered them. The Sooners could not move the ball at all, even with Mateer back at quarterback. Now, sure, I don't think that he was 100%, but he still threw multiple interceptions. He was under constant pressure, and we already knew that Oklahoma could not run the ball. So when you add all those things up, it's a recipe for disaster. Meanwhile, for Texas, the offense finally found some sort of rhythm. They got the ground game going for the first time all season, and that really changed everything. Brent Venables' defense, they held strong early on, but when your offense can't sustain drives, fatigue starts to set in, and that's exactly what happened. Texas just wore them down. They were the more physical team. They made the adjustments at halftime, and suddenly the O-line and the running game started clicking for the first time all season. So this was a huge game that Texas had to have, and they got it. Now, they're not out of the playoff picture yet. A lot of people believe that they are already out of it after their first two losses, but they are walking a fine line. One more loss probably ends it, but they're still very alive and very much in it. That said, this team still has plenty of flaws. I am not a believer in Arch still or the offensive line, but this was easily their most impressive win of the year, and you just can't deny that. As for Oklahoma, this offense has problems. If you can't find a run game soon from someone not named John Mateer, it's going to be a really rough back half of the season. They've got no balance, and if Mateer doesn't get healthy fast, this could spiral. Moving on now to Alabama versus Missouri, and the Crimson Tide just keep proving me wrong. Every single week, they keep beating teams that I thought would expose them, and Missouri was supposed to be one of those teams. Alabama is not the same team we saw in week 1 against Florida State. They look hungrier, they're more physical, and they just look like a better football team. Now, I'm not saying there aren't vulnerabilities, because there absolutely are. If Missouri had a better quarterback, they probably would win this game. Alabama, they couldn't run the ball very effectively at all. They had to get really creative in how they passed the ball. They kind of had to spread it around to multiple receivers, none of which named Ryan Williams. And defensively, they weren't elite. But what I am saying is that Alabama is not the team that we painted them to be back in week 1. And more games like this that they win, the more people are going to forget about that early loss to Florida State. And make no mistake, this was an impressive win. Yes, it was only a one-score game, but context matters. This was on the road against a rested Missouri team coming off of a bye, while Alabama was coming off of back-to-back emotional wins. It's a game that they should have lost. Oh, and by the way, their best running back went out with a concussion, and like I said, Ryan Williams had 0 catches. And still, it felt like Alabama was in control the entire way. And Ty Simpson, he continues to look like a dog. He's calm, he's efficient, and he's getting better every single week. On defense, they did exactly what they needed to do, and that's limit Ahmad Hardy and force Prebula to throw. And when that happened, the game was all but over. Prebula looked lost out there. He looked confused, rattled, uncomfortable. Honestly, I really didn't understand Missouri's play calling here. They were only down 1 score, and they have elite running backs, yet they kept the ball out of their best players' hands over and over again and forced Prebula to throw instead of just running the ball with their best players, and that just didn't make sense to me at all. I still think Missouri is a good football team, maybe not as good as I thought that they were. And as for Alabama, it was ugly. Yes, there were mistakes they needed to clean up, but they overcame everything. The spot disadvantage, the road disadvantage, the injury disadvantage, even the kicking disadvantage, and they still won. They lined up against a physical football team and out-physicaled them. They won time of possession, they let Missouri make the mistakes, and they had a quarterback who looked like one of the best in the country. This was not a perfect game, but it was a statement win. Alabama is finding its identity, and it's starting to look like that identity is built on toughness, discipline, and resilience. Moving on now to A&M versus Florida, and the Aggies do it again, man. They look really, really freaking good. And the scary part is they haven't even hit their ceiling yet. Nobody's really going to talk about this game because, let's be honest, Florida is not viewed as a great team right now, but I was actually paying really close attention to this one. After watching Florida figure it out and beat Texas last week, I wanted to see if that was the start of a resurgence, and, well, the answer is not really. I mean, they didn't look as bad as they did earlier in the season, but like I suspected, this was just a return to the mean. I still expect Billy Napier to be fired probably by the end of next week, if I had to be honest. Not the first time I've said that, so we'll see. But as for A&M, they just took care of business. Their defense looked much improved. The offense was balanced and effective both through the air and on the ground. Marcel Reed continues to impress, and the team overall just looked more disciplined. Way fewer penalties this time around. A&M looks just dangerous, dude. They're playing clean football, they're playing physical, and they're improving every single week. And honestly, I still think they're going to be in the SEC championship game at the end of the season. Moving on now to USC versus Michigan, and I was way off on this one. I thought history would repeat itself because under Lincoln Riley, USC has never had success against teams that profiled as big and physical as this Michigan team. But that was not the case here. USC went toe-to-toe with Michigan and actually won the physical battle. They ran the ball really effectively and they controlled the line of scrimmage, and that was the key to success in this game. And of course, they passed the ball well too. That's never been an issue for Lincoln Riley offenses. Maiava looked great, composed, efficient, and Lemon is an absolute stud at receiver. But the biggest surprise for me was the defense. They held Michigan under 4 yards per carry and made them work for every single yard they got. Now, it's fair to point out that Michigan's offense is not exactly elite right now, but still, that's the best USC's defense has looked all season. They play disciplined, physical football, and that's been their missing piece. Next week, they take a trip to South Bend, and that's the real test for me against Notre Dame. They've got a chance to end the Irish's season entirely, but if they go out there and lay an egg, this win loses a lot of its shine, in my opinion. As for Michigan, the story is the same as always. They're solid in the trenches, but they still don't have explosive playmakers to keep up in games like this. Justice Haynes, he got banged up. That didn't help either, though it sounds like he'll be fine moving forward. We'll learn more about both of these teams in the coming weeks, but for now, USC passed a major test, and they did it in a way that completely flips the narrative around this program. Can they do it again next week? We'll see. Moving on now to LSU versus South Carolina, and this was a really odd game, honestly kind of an ugly one, but that's been the theme for LSU this season. We know what they are by now. They have an elite defense paired with a subpar offense that just can't seem to put it all together, but there were some encouraging signs in this game. For the first time in a while, LSU actually ran the ball really effectively. They averaged 5.5 yards per carry, they broke off multiple explosive runs, and showed flashes of what this offense could look like once it finds its rhythm. Now, the turnovers could have been killers here, 2 of them inside the 5-yard line. If those go the other way, the game is probably a blowout for LSU. That's something they absolutely have to clean up because against better teams, those mistakes are definitely going to cost you, but didn't cost them here because they were playing against an inferior team. Overall, though, LSU looked better offensively than the box score suggests, and you can tell that this team is improving week by week. They're not there yet, but once they hit their peak, they will be dangerous. And as for South Carolina, I hinted a little bit earlier, there's nothing new to say. They have the same issues we've seen show up all season, and until they fix those, it's hard to see them as a team that's going to take a step forward. I really don't think they're that good of a team, and I think they'll lose several more games going forward. All right, now I have a few other games I want to talk about just a little bit. Not going to give a full breakdown, but just talk about a little bit because I think they're pretty interesting. First off, Florida State versus Pitt. It's not going to be really a game breakdown as much as it is a Florida State breakdown because at this point, I think it's time we have a serious conversation about Mike Norvell. He has to go. I don't think Florida State can be a successful long-term program with him at the helm. Now, can they afford it? I don't know, man. I like Norvell. He's done a lot of good for this program, but he's clearly not the right guy to take Florida State where it needs to go. This team is undisciplined. They make the same mistakes over and over, and it's reached a point where you can't keep blaming the players. This is on coaching. And even beyond that, I think the culture is in trouble. They've become way too reliant on the portal, and it's starting to show. There's no continuity. There's no foundation. It's just a constant cycle of plugging holes with quick fixes. And that's just not how you build a sustainable program. The truth is, Florida State keeps beating Florida State. They have the talent, and outside of Miami, they've had the better roster in every single loss this year. But they shoot themselves in the foot every single time. They beat themselves against Virginia. They beat themselves here against Pitt. And it probably won't be the last time they shoot themselves in the foot again. As for Pitt, credit where it's due. They found a little bit of new juice with their freshman quarterback. They have an identity and something to build on. But Florida State right now, I don't know what they're building. But hopefully whatever they are building, it's with a new coach. Because until they figure it out, we're going to keep having the same conversation. All right, now let's talk about games again. Texas Tech versus Kansas. Texas Tech is clearly the best team in the Big 12. It's been a while since we've had a true undisputed number one in that conference, but it's pretty evident right now. The investment they made into this program is paying huge dividends, and they look like a team built for dominance. They obliterated Kansas in what should have been a classic sleepy spot, and the fact that they didn't take their foot off the gas at all tells you everything you need to know about how well coached and well focused this group is. Ohio State versus Illinois. Illinois didn't have a prayer in this one, honestly. It went exactly as I expected. The Buckeyes continue to fire on all cylinders, elite defense, clean execution, and a quarterback who is growing more confident by the week. And Illinois, they are average at best. There's really no reason to pay attention to them for the rest of the season. They're just not going to make much noise at all. And lastly, Tennessee versus Arkansas. The Vols had a fight in this one, but ultimately they survived against the Razorbacks. Defense is becoming a real problem for the Vols here. Taylor Green exposed them for big plays, and they just couldn't get them off the field consistently. The only thing that saved Tennessee here was that Arkansas's defense is somehow even worse. It was a sloppy, high-scoring, entertaining game, but Tennessee has got to clean things up if they want to hang with the top of the SEC. All right, well, that's all for this video, guys. Enjoy. Peace.